Hey fam, you've been here before. Different person, different situation, the same feeling. The same dynamic that exhausted you last time somehow found you again. Maybe in a different relationship, maybe in a friendship, maybe in work, maybe even how you treat yourself. And you look back and think, how did I end up here again? I knew this pattern, I recognized it, and I still walked into it. Most people answer this question with shame. I'm broken, I'm naive, I never learned. But that's not what's actually happening. What's happening is the most documented pattern studied in the entire human psychology. And once you understand it, not just intellectually, really understand it, you stop blaming yourself and start seeing the mechanism clearly enough to actually change it. I'm going to be honest about something I was not saying out loud. For years, through different relationships, different dynamics, different contexts,
just say it.
I can't.
I kept finding myself in the situations where something felt familiar. Not comfortable, familiar. There is a difference. Familiar can feel like home, even when home was painful. After my last relationship ended, a relationship I ended consciously, maturely, for real reasons. I understood. I started looking at the pattern underneath it, not just the relationship, the whole thread. What did I keep gravitating toward? What dynamic kept recreating itself? What feeling did I keep seeking out even when I said I didn't want it? And what was I found was flattering. But it was real. I was drawn to dynamics that was something familiar and what I believed about myself at a level deeper than my conscious mind. Not what I said I believed, what I actually believed about whether I deserve ease. About what love was supposed to feel like.
Yeah.
About whether safety was trustworthy or just the calm before something breaks. The discovery was really uncomfortable. It was also the beginning of something important. Freud called it repetition compulsion, the unconscious tendency to recreate familiar emotional dynamics, even painful ones, because the unconscious mind is not trying to hurt you. It was trying to master what was never resolved. Think about it this way. If you grew up in an environment where love came with conditions, where affections was unpredictable, where you had to earn safety, where closeness sometimes precedes pain, your nervous system learned a template. This is what relationships feels like. This is what love feels like. This is what being close to someone feels like. And when you meet someone new, your unconscious isn't asking, is this person good for me? It's asking, does this feel familiar? Familiar just equals safe. Even familiar equals painful. Carl Jung took this further with attachment patterns. He argued that the relationships we are most powerfully drawn to are often the carriers of our unconscious material. The person who triggers you most intensely, who makes you feel things you can't expect or you can't explain them, who pulls you in even when you know where is better, is often holding a mirror to your shadow, to the parts of yourself you haven't integrated, the ones you have looked at directly. You are not choosing them despite the pain. On some level you're choosing them because of it, because that pain is pointing somewhere. And until you go there, you'll keep finding different faces for the same problem. Attachment fear adds another layer. Depending on how your early bonds were formed,
It is a lie. They know.
you developed a style of attaching to people. Secure, anxious, avoidant, disorganized. This style operates automatically. They run below conscious decision making. The anxious attached person gravitates toward people who keep them uncertain, because certainty feels unfamiliar, even threatening. The avoidant attached person pulls close, then pushes away, recreating the distance that felt safe. Neither pattern is choosing constantly. Both feel completely natural from the inside. Both keep recreating the same dynamic in new relationship with new faces. Here's the part most people resist. The relationship that hurts often feels like it's more real. The intensity, the push and pull, the high highs and high lows, the feeling that this person reaches parts that nobody else can. The intensity is often not love, it's activation. It's a nervous system recognizing a familiar pattern and flooding you with neurochemicals because something old is being touched. Calm, consistent, genuine, caring relationships can feel boring to someone whose nervous system learned that love equals intensity. Not because the calm relationship is inferior, because their baseline of what love feels like was set in the conditions of care. Oh my thumb. This is not your fault. You didn't set your own baseline. You inherited it, but you can change it. Slowly, with honesty, with real inner work. Not by forcing yourself to choose differently before the pattern is understood, but by going to where the pattern was formed and doing the actual work there. So how does actual work looks like? First, map the pattern, not just the person. Stop asking, why did they hurt me? Start asking what dynamics kept recreating itself. What role do you keep playing? What feelings keep showing up? What does this relationship have in common? Not in the other person, in you. The map is inside you. The other person is just where you find it this time. The second, get curious about what familiar feels like. When something feels like home, ask whether the home was actually safe, because your nervous system can tell you the difference between familiar safe and familiar painful. Both register as known, both feel like belonging. And third, let safe feel safe. This is the harder than it sounds. If your nervous system learned that calm equals danger, the consistency means someone isn't passionate, the ease means the other shoe is about to drop, you will consciously disturb peace. Create a conflict where there isn't any. Test people who don't need to be tested. Learning to tolerate ease, to trust the consistency, to let safe actually feels like safety, that's the real work, and it takes time. I'm still learning this. I notice the pull towards familiar dynamics. I notice when intensity is trying to pass as depth. I notice when I'm about to choose the pattern instead of a person. And sometimes I catch it, but sometimes don't. But I catch it sooner. The goal isn't to become a person that never gets wrong. The goal is to keep shortening the time between the choice and the recognition, between the pattern and the awareness, between choosing the pain and understanding why. Because the day you stop choosing the people who hurt you doesn't look dramatic. It looks like a quiet moment where something familiar shows up. And for the first time, you see it for what it is. And you choose something different. There is a story we tell ourselves about stagnation. That it happened to us, life got busy, circumstances changed, or we ran out of time, energy or resources. Like we will start again when things settle down. But here's an uncomfortable truth. Stagnation isn't something that happens to you. It's a decision you make. Not once, maybe in a single dramatic moment, but in a series of small, completely understandable moments where you choose what was known over what's possible, where you choose safe. And the moment you made that choice was the moment you stopped growing. Not because you are weak, not because you don't care, but because your brain did exactly what it was designed to do. And understanding that design is one way possible to override it. I've been posting on this channel for over 2 years.
What is happening? I won't let this define me.
I want to be honest what these 2 years looked like. There have been stretches, real stretches, where I didn't see results I wanted, where the numbers stayed flat, when I published something I was proud of and the world responded with silence. In those moments, the comfortable choice was always visible and was always available. Stop! Pivot, do something safer, build skills that have a more predictable return. Stop putting your thoughts and your face online for an audience that might have never grown. The uncomfortable choice was to keep growing.
I see it now, the path is clear. No longer a mystery, just execution.
Without any guarantee that it would work, without a sign from universe, without a permission. And I want to be clear. It was not so heroic. I am saying I understood something that made this choice clearer. Stopping felt like safety, but it was a different kind of risk. The risk of never finding out. And that risk, for me, was always worse. Let's talk about what actually happens when you choose safety instead of growth. Your brain has a system called homeostasis. In biology, homeostasis is a body drive to maintain a stable internal state, temperature, blood sugar, or a heart rate with breathing. But homeostasis doesn't just operate in your body, it operates in your psychology too. Your brain has a set point, a familiar range of emotion, behavior, or identity that it works constantly to maintain. When you try to grow beyond that set point, when you take a risk or try something new, push into unfamiliar territory, your brain registers that as a threat, not because growth is dangerous, because it's unfamiliar, and unfamiliar triggers the same alarm as actual danger. This is why growth is uncomfortable by design, not as punishment, as a feature of a brain that prioritizes survival over fulfillment. Your comfort zone isn't the circle you step outside of, it's a thermostat, and every time you move toward the edge, the thermostat kicks in and tries to bring you back. The resistance you feel toward growth isn't weakness, it's your nervous system doing its job. But here's something about thermostat. You can reset it, not by forcing yourself into discomfort once and calling it growth, but by repeatedly, consistently choosing the edge until the edge becomes new set point, until what was once uncomfortable becomes your new normal, and then you push the edge again. Let's be honest about what choosing safety actually costs, because safety feels free. It feels like nothing, like you just didn't do something, like a natural choice. It isn't. Every time you choose safety over growth, you pay something. You pay impossibility in the version of yourself that would have existed if you'd made another choice, in the relationship you didn't pursue, the creative work you didn't make, the direction you kept preparing for without even actually moving. And here's what genuinely makes this painful. You don't feel the cost immediately. Safety feels like relief in some moment. The cost comes later, quietly, in the form of a life that stops feeling like yours, in the flatness that sets in when you've been safe for too long, in the distance between who you are and who you might become, the distance that grows every time you choose the known over possibilities.
I'm free now.
That's not safety, that's a slow kind of loss. So how do you actually make another choice? Not once dramatically or in a moment of inspiration, but consistently in the ordinary moments where comfort is available and growth is inconvenient. First, name the choice when it's happening. Most people don't realize they are making a choice. The drift towards comfort feels passive, like nothing is happening. But it's not nothing, it's a decision. When you notice yourself avoiding something, a conversation, a creative risk, a direction, name it out loud.
I can't do this anymore. I'm so tired. Okay.
I am choosing safety right now, not as judgment, as information. Because you can't choose differently in a choice you don't know you are making. Second, make growth smaller step. The reason people don't grow is often that they've made growth too large. The goal is so big, so uncertain. The gap between here and there makes staying here feel rational. Shrink the step. What's the smallest possible movement toward the uncomfortable thing? Not the whole journey. One step, small enough that thermostat don't panic, but in the direction of growth every day. Third, redefine what safety actually means. The brain thinks the safety is standing still, but for some with ambitions, with potential, staying still is the most dangerous thing where you can be. Real safety for the kind of person that watched this video is movement, momentum, knowing that you are building something real. When you feel that momentum, that is safety. The stillness that feels safe is actually the most exposed you will ever be. I don't know when you made the last uncomfortable choice. Maybe it was recently, maybe it's been a while. But I know this. Right now, somewhere in your life, there is a door you've been standing in front of. Not walking, not moving away, just standing. And every day you stand there without choosing, you are making a choice. The choice to be safe. I'm not asking to blow up your life. I'm not asking for a dramatic gesture. I'm asking for the quiet, small, unsexy decision to take one step toward this door. Not because you are ready, not because the outcome is guaranteed, but because the version of you that steps through is the only version that finds out what's on the other side. And that version is worth more than thousands of safety places. You are doing everything right. Reading right books, waking up early, meditating, journaling, working out and tracking habits. You look like someone who has it together. And yet, something feels wrong. Not broken wrong, not crisis wrong. Just trapped wrong. Like you built a very impressive cage and called it a life. Like self-improvement became the point instead of the vehicle. Like somewhere along the way you stopped growing towards something and started to growing just to keep growing. If that lands somewhere in you, this video is for you, because what you are experiencing has a name, and more importantly, it has a way out. When I came back from the darkest period of my own life, addiction, psychosis and complete collapse, I rebuilt myself through self-improvement. And I mean that literally. It was the scaffolding that held me up while everything else was being reconstructed. The routines, the books, the habits, they gave me a structure when I have none. Purpose felt meaningless. Control when everything felt chaotic. For a while, that was exactly what I needed. But at some point, a scaffolding became a building. I was so focused on optimizing, improving, that I never stopped to ask, becoming what? Exactly. Improving towards what? I was running a very efficient machine without no destination. And the machine demanded constant fuel. If I wasn't improving, I was falling behind.
What is happening? I won't let this define me.
If I wasn't reading, I was wasting time. If I wasn't working on myself, I was being lazy. The self-improvement had become its own prison. Not because it was bad, but because I stopped using it as a tool and started serving it like a master. And the most disorienting part was, from an outside, everything looks clean and great. There is a concept there that I want to introduce. It's a spiritual bypassing. Psychologist John Wellwood coined using the term to describe using spiritual or psychological practices to avoid, rather than face your actual reality.
That's a 10 days of workout.
Your actual emotions and your actual material problems. Self-improvement can do exactly the same thing. You can use meditation to avoid feeling, using productivity to avoid sitting with emptiness, use reading about psychology instead of going to the therapy, use growth content to avoid the specific concrete thing that actually needs to change in your life. The activity looks like progress. The function is avoidance. There is also arrival fallacy, which I've mentioned before in my previous video. The belief that somewhere ahead, when you are optimized enough, when you are improved enough, you will finally feel okay. Self-improvement culture is built on that belief. And it's one of the most effective traps in existence, because the goal stop never stops moving. There is always another book, another habit, another routine, another version of yourself that will finally feel enough.
That's a 2 year of workout.
And then there is an identity trap. At some point, the self-improvement stops being that you do and became something you are. I am someone who reads 15 books a year. I am someone who wakes up at 5 a.m. I am someone who never skips a workout. These identities feel solid, but they are also cages. Because anything that threatens the identity, a week where you don't read, a period where routines breaks, a season of life that demands rest, feels like failure. Feels like losing yourself, when it's actually just a life. I want to say something that at the first time feels contradictory. The self-improvement cocoon is not wrong. It exists for a reason. For people who've been through the real darkness, chaos, addiction, trauma or crisis. The structure of self-improvement is genuinely healing. It's a cocoon. It's a container for transformation. A way of holding yourself together while something is changing. The problem isn't the cocoon. The problem is staying in it after the transformation has completed. A cocoon that once was a shelter becomes a prison when you are ready to fly, but you are afraid to break free from walls. The question isn't, should I stop improving myself? The question is, am I using this to keep moving toward in my life? Or am I using it to avoid this? So how do you know when you've outgrown the cocoon? And how do you break through? First, ask what self-improvement is in service of, not in general, specifically. What is all of this for? If you can't answer this question clearly, if the answer is just to be better, that's worth sitting with. Better for what? Better in what direction? Better toward what life? Self-improvement without direction is sophisticated spinning in life. Second, notice what you're avoiding. When you reach for a book, for a podcast, another routine, ask yourself honestly, is this moving me toward something or is it keeping me away from something? The thing you keep not doing, the conversation, the creative work, the risk, that's usually where the real growth is. And no amount of optimizing will substitute for going there really. Third, practice being instead of becoming.
Yeah.
This is the hardest shift for people like us. But there has to be a space in your life, real, honest and unproductive space where you are not improving anything, where you're just existing, just human, just being. Not because you've earned it, not as a reward for enough productivity, just because the life isn't a self-improvement project. Life is the thing that's happening while you are busy trying to get ready for it. I still use the tools, the reading, the journaling, the reflection, but I hold them differently now. They are instruments, not authorities. They serve the life.
I see it now. The path is clear. No longer a mystery, just execution.
The life doesn't serve them. And when the routine breaks, when life demands something different, I don't feel like I'm failing. I feel like I'm living. You built a cocoon for a reason. It held you when you needed holding, but you were never meant to stay in it. The whole point of the cocoon was always to get you ready for the moment you break through. That moment might be now. What if you could wake up in your own dreams? Not as a metaphor. Literally become conscious while you're dreaming. Know that you are dreaming. And from that awareness, choose what happened next. That sounds like a science fiction, but it's not. Lucid dreaming is one of the most documented, most studied, most quietly extraordinary concept in sleep science. And I spent 1 full year of testing it on myself. Not casually, not occasionally, constantly and with full intention. With a journal, with the real techniques and real failure and real results. What happened over those 12 months? It was not I was expected. Not just in my dreams, in my waking life. And that's what this video is actually about. I want to be honest why I started this experiment. It wasn't purely scientific curiosity. I was at a point of my life where my inner world felt chaotic and largely out of my control. I'd been through a lot, like a psychosis, addiction, rebuilding, and even after the acute crisis was over, even when the waking life was stabilizing, my dreams were intense, vivid and often disturbing, full of content I couldn't fully make sense of. I'd read enough Carl Jung to understand that dreams are not random noise. They are the unconscious speaking its own language. And I wanted to learn that language, not just observe it, engage with it. Lucid dreaming felt like a way in it, a way to meet my own unconscious, not as a passive observer, but as an active participant. So I committed to a year and I started to logging everything. Let me walk you through what a year of this actually looked like. First month, almost nothing. The most important foundation of lucid dreaming is dream recall, remembering your dreams at all. Most people wake up and within minutes the dreams is completely gone. So month 1 was just a journal next to my bed. Every morning before coffee, before phone, before anything, write down everything you could remember from the night. At first fragments, images, feelings without context, slowly scenes, characters or narratives. By the end of month 1, I was remembering 2 to 3 dreams per day. That alone, before even lucid dream, changed something. Because suddenly I have access to my materials of consciousness that my mind was never produced. Symbols, fears, desires, dynamics I was not thinking that I am carrying. Month 2 and 3, first lucid moments. The technique I used most consistently was a reality checking. Through the day, multiple times, you ask yourself, am I dreaming right now? And you perform a check. Look at your hands, look at the patterns on your hands and count fingers from 1 to 5. Because in dreams, usually you will have 6 to 7 fingers or even 3. Or you can read a text, look away and read it again. it will be different type of text. In dreams, text changes, hence looks wrong, physics behave differently. The goal is to make this check so habitual that eventually you will perform it inside your dream. And when you do, and when the check fails, you will realize you are dreaming. My first lucid moment came in month 2. I was in a dream, looked at my hands, and they've had too many fingers. And something in my head click, I am dreaming. The clarity lasted maybe 15 seconds before my dream destabilized and I woke up. 15 seconds of the most unusual psychological concept I've ever had. Complete awareness inside the constructed reality. Months 4 to 7, deepening. Over the following months, lucid moments become more frequent and more stable. I learned how to stabilize dream state, touching surfaces, spinning slowly, or focuses on sensory detail to keep the conscious mind anchored without waking up. And I started doing something intentional inside a dream. I started having conversations with figures that appeared in my dream, asking them questions or listening their answers. This sounds strange. I know it sounds strange. But what emerged from those conversations? The imagery, the responses.
Hi, what's up? Haha.
The symbolic content consistently was pointing toward things that I've actively avoiding in my real waking life.
I'm free now.
Jung called dream figures aspects of the psyche, part of the self that the conscious mind has not yet integrated. Meeting them consciously in a dream state with full awareness was unlike anything the therapy gives to me. Months 8 to 12, integration. By the second half of the year, lucid dreaming had become less the experience inside a dream and more about what I brought back from it. Each lucid dream left residue, imagery, feelings, insights I couldn't have arrived at through conscious reasoning alone. I started to working with this residue intentionally, journaling not just about what happened, but what it pointed toward, what was the unconscious trying to surface. And slowly, quietly, things started shifted in my personal life. So after a year or one, here's my honest feedback and a full breakdown. What's genuinely real? Dream recall completely transformative and available to almost everyone within a week. The dreams were always there. You just weren't bringing them back. Psychological content of dreams absolutely real and constantly meaningful. If you pay attention to your dreams, for a year you will encounter material about yourself that conscious reflection never surfaces. Lucid dreaming is a tool for inner work, more powerful than I expected. The conversations with dream figures,
Yeah.
the ability to face fear scenarios consciously, the direct engagement with unconscious things. These were genuinely valuable. What's really overhyped? The idea that you will fly every night, have complete control, live a second life. Not realistic, but you can do it anyway. Lucid dreaming takes consistent effort. Some night it doesn't work. Some lucid dream destabilize immediately. Some months are better than others. It's a practice, not a feature you unlock. And what surprised me the most, the waking life changes were more significant than anything that happened in dreams. The discipline of daily journaling, the habit of questioning reality, the development of meta-awareness, the ability to observe my own mind from a slight distance is completely real. Those skills don't stay in a bedroom, they bleed into everything. If you want to try this, here's what actually works. Start with a dream recall, nothing else, just do some journaling of them. Before any technique, any app, just put a journal besides your bed. Every morning, before anything else, write whatever you remember, even if it's just a color or sound, a feeling, a word. Do this for 2 weeks before trying anything else. Then add reality test. Pick 5 moments in your day, morning, lunch, afternoon, dinner, and genuinely ask yourself, could I be dreaming? Check your hands, read something twice, make it real, not mechanical. Actually question it. Be patient with month 1. Almost nobody has a lucid dream in a week 1. The first month is infrastructure, dream recall, reality testing, and consistency. The lucid dream comes when the foundation is solid. In your dream journal, note recurring patterns, images, figures, or places. What appears more than once is usually the most important material. I still practice lucid dreaming, not with the same intensity as the experiment year, but the journal stays next to my bed. The reality checks are built in. The curiosity about what the unconscious is doing each night that never left. What a year of this taught me most wasn't just about my dreams, it was about attention. The quality of attention you bring to your inner world, to the images, the content, the feeling your mind produces when you are not controlling it. That quality determines so much how well you understood yourself. Most people spend their entire lives ignoring a third of their existence. The sleeping third, the dreaming third. The parts where your unconscious gets to speak without interruption. I started listening, and what I heard changes. Have you ever been somewhere completely familiar? A place you know or people that you know for years and felt completely out of place. Not anxious, not sad, just not fitting anymore. Like environment stayed the same and you didn't. Like everyone around you is speaking a language you used to speak fluently and now the words feel foreign. Like you walked through the door and the person who walked out from the other side doesn't quite match the person everyone here remembers. If that's familiar, you are not losing your mind. You are not broken. You are not ungrateful. You are changing. And changing, real change, is one of the loneliest experiences that person can have. I want to tell you about coming back after the addiction, after a psychosis, after the collapse and rebuilding. There came a point where the actual crisis is over. I was stable, functioning and moving forward. And I went back to people, to places, dynamics I'd know before. And nothing fit. Not in an obvious way. Not in a way I could easily explain or justify. The same conversation with friends feels empty. The same jokes landed differently. The same dynamics felt like a costumes I'd outgrow. And everyone was expecting me to wear them.
Just say it.
I can't.
And I felt deeply, confusingly, like a stranger. Not to them, to myself, or more precisely, the self they remembered was not who I am right now.
It is a lie. They know.
And I didn't yet know fully who I was becoming. I was in the gap, the uncomfortable, disorienting, profoundly lonely place between who I am right now and who I will become. Nobody prepares you for that gap. Everyone talks about transformation like a triumphant. Nobody tells you about silence in between. Jung called this individuation, a lifelong process of becoming who you truly are. A distinct between who you were to be in family, culture, environment, or survival. It's not a single event, it's not a breakthrough moment. When your values shift, your perspective expands, your tolerance for certain things collapses. Your world around you don't automatically update. The people who knew the old you is still expecting the old you. They are not wrong to, that's who they know. But you are not that person anymore.
Yeah.
And mismatch between who you are now and who everyone expects you to be. That's not a sign something went wrong. That's a sign that something went right. There is a psychological concept called identity foreclosure. When someone adopts an identity early and never revises it, whether the person they became was a genuine choice or just a path of least resistance. Most people live in identity foreclosure. They are who they were taught to be. They do what was expected. They stay in environments that confirm the old story. When you start growing beyond that, when you start questioning, changing, becoming, the foreclosure identities around you will feel the dissonance, and sometimes they will resist it, because your change implies that change is possible, and not everyone is ready for that implication. I want to name something that doesn't get named enough. The loneliness of growth is real, not the loneliness of isolation. You might have people around you, the loneliness of not fully being known, of carrying a version of yourself that the people closest to you haven't met yet, of being in transition, which means simultaneously not being not who you were and not yet fully who you are becoming. That's in between is the hardest thing where you can live, because you don't fit anywhere completely. The old world feels too small. The new world hasn't materialized yet. And the temptation in that place is enormous.
That's a 10 days of workout.
The temptation to go back, to shrink back into the old self, to speak the old language, to be who they remember, because at least that person was known.
That's a 2 year of workout.
I understand that temptation completely, but going back doesn't work. Not really, because the self that has been changing doesn't unchange. You just cover it, and covering costs way more than moving forward. So how do you move through this? Not quickly, I want to be honest about that. The gap takes as long as it takes, but there are ways to move through instead of getting stuck inside it. First, let yourself to be in a transition. Not fixed, not finished, not figured out, just in the process. The pressure to have a clear identity, to know exactly who you are, to be able to explain yourself coherently. That pressure doesn't serve the transition. It just makes you to perform stability that you don't have now. Let yourself to be a masterpiece in progress. That's not a lesser state, it's the most alive state there is. Second, find the people who know the current you. Not better people, not replacing anyone, but seek out places where the version of you that is emerging is seen and recognized. Even one person who meets you where are you now
Hi, what's up? Haha.
can make a gap survivable. Third, document the transition. Not for an audience, for yourself. Write it down, speak it out loud. The act of putting words who you are now and who you are becoming makes it more real. Gives it substance. Makes the gap feel like a crossing instead of a void. I don't feel like a stranger anymore. Not because I stopped changing, because I stopped expecting the old world to recognize the new me. I stopped trying to fit where I don't fit, and I started building toward where I did. The feeling of being stranger in your old life is not a malfunction. It's your nervous system telling you you've outgrown the container, and the answer isn't to shrink back into it. The answer is to build a bigger one that fits who you actually are now. Not who you were, not who everyone remembers, who you are right now, in the middle of the becoming. You are exhausted, genuinely, deeply, bone level exhausted, and someone tells you, just rest, take a break, do nothing for a while, and something in you immediately resists, not because you don't want to. You want to desperately. The moment the doing stops, something uncomfortable moves in. Guilt, the feeling of falling behind.
This is what I want to be, but it's slipping away. Maybe tomorrow I'll start.
A quiet but present voice saying you should be doing something. You are wasting time. Everyone else is moving and you are standing still. And so you reach for the phone, you start a podcast, you take your notes, you find something, anything to fill the space that just opened up, because the silence is harder than exhaustion. If that sounds familiar, what you are experiencing isn't laziness, isn't lack of discipline.
That's a 10 days of workout.
It's a wound, and it has nothing to do with productivity. I'm going to tell you something that I don't say easily. I don't know how to rest. Not really. I can sleep. Sleep comes eventually. And there have been times where a drink in the evening finally quieted the noise to feel something like stillness. But genuine rest, being present without doing anything, existing without producing, sitting without achieving, that still doesn't come naturally to me. When I stop, really stop, the first thing that arrives isn't a peace. It's a feeling of time passing without purpose. The feeling of distance opening up between where I am and what I think where I should be. And I know this about myself. I've looked at it directly. I understand where it comes from. But understanding it and being free of it are two different things. What I've learned through years of personal therapy, through real self-examination, that is my inability to rest is not a productivity feature. It's a protection mechanism. And the thing that it's protecting me from is something the most ambitious people don't want to look at. Let's talk about what's actually happening when the actual rest feels wrong. For many people, especially for people with ambition, with a history of difficulty, with something to prove, constant activity is not discipline. It's a coping mechanism. When you are moving, working, building, producing, you are not in the silence. And the silence is where the things you haven't processed lie. The unresolved grief, the questions you don't want to ask, the feelings that don't have names here, the gap between where you are and where you should be. Activity keeps all that at manageable distance. Rest brings it close. Psychologists call this hyperproductivity as avoidance. It's not the same as genuine drive or ambition. Genuine drive comes from wanting to move towards something. Hyperproductivity as avoidance comes from not wanting to stop, because stopping means feeling something. The difference is subtle from the outside. From the inside, it feels completely different. Genuine momentum feels expansive. Avoidance-driven productivity feels like running. There's also what's called hustle trauma. A generation that absorbed the message through social media, through culture.
What is happening? I won't let this define me.
Through comparison, that rest is for the weak, that sleep is for people without goal, that if you are not building at every available moment, you're falling behind some mysterious standard. This message went in deep, not just as an idea, as felt reality. The body learned to associate stillness with danger, with falling behind, with feeling left, with becoming nothing. And bodies don't unlearn that quickly. Here's what actually chronic inability to rest do for you. Physically, the research is clear. Cortisol stays elevated.
I can't do this anymore. I'm so tired. Kate.
Nervous system stays in sympathetic activation, fight or flight. Recovery never fully happens. Output quality drops while input effort increases. You work more and produce less. You push harder and move slower. The body starts sending signals you eventually stop hearing. But the psychological cost is more interesting. When you never stop, when you never create space, you also never integrate. Integration is what happens in the gap. The processing of what you've been through. The synthesis of what you've been learning. The emergence of insight that only comes in stillness. The most creative, most important thinking doesn't happen at the desk. It happens in the shower, on the walk, in the half sleep, in the morning, in the spaces you keep feeling. By refusing to rest, you are not just exhausting yourself. You are blocking a part of your mind that needs silence to do its best work. I want to be careful here. I'm not going to tell you that learning to rest is simple. For some people, for people like me, it's some of the hardest work there is. But here's what actually helps. First, understand what restlessness is protect. When you feel the pull to feel the silence, get curious about it before you act on it. What's the silence you don't want to feel? What thoughts arrives the moment you stop? What does the stillness touch in you? You don't have to fix it, just name it.
I'm free now.
The naming alone reduces its power. Second, redefine rest as productive. I know this sounds like a trick, but for a nervous system that associates rest with failure, reframing is a necessary bridge. Rest is when your nervous systems recovers. Rest is when your brain integrates. Rest is when creativity regenerates. You are not falling behind when you rest. You are building a capacity to move faster when you will start again. This isn't a spiritual advice. This is a neuroscience. Third, start with structured, unstructured time. For people who can do nothing, give the nothing a container. 20 minutes, phone away, no input, just exist. Let whatever comes, come. Don't chase it, don't solve it. Just let it move through. It will be uncomfortable at first. It gets easier. And what starts to emerge in that places, thoughts, the clarity, the feeling, is often the more valuable than anything the productivity was building toward. I'm still learning this. There are days when I do it well, days when I sit with the stillness and let it be what it is, completely in stillness, without doing anything.
Yeah.
And what I find there, when I stay, is not a disaster I was avoiding. It's usually just me. The parts of me that don't get hurt when I am always moving. The inability to rest isn't a character flaw. It's information. It's telling you that somewhere inside, something inside needs your attention. Not optimization and not productivity. Just attention. The voice that says you should be doing something is not your ambition, it's your fear. And fear is not a good enough reason to spend your whole life running. You are allowed to stop, not because you earned it, not because everything is finished, but because you are a human being, not a human doing, and you deserve to know what stillness actually feels like. I use AI almost every day, for work, for psychology, even for the gift card, for generating options that I wouldn't have seen alone. I'm not here to tell you that AI is bad. I'm not a technophobe. I genuinely believe that these tools are extraordinary, but something started to happen that I didn't expect and didn't notice immediately. The more I used AI, the less I was trusting my thinking. Not dramatically, not obviously, quietly. Just like a muscle you stop using because there's something nearby willing to do the work for you. And the muscle doesn't disappear overnight. It just gets a little weaker each day, a little less confident, a little less yours. This video is about that quiet weakening and about what I think is happening to the entire generation of people using AI to improve themselves while slowly outsourcing the capacity of real growth. I want to tell you exactly how I noticed this. I was working on a script, a content for my channel, and I hit a moment of uncertainty. Not a block, just a pause. The normal creative friction where you are not sure which direction to take. And with deep thinking, I opened AI, described the problem and get directions within seconds. Picked one direction from 3 and move on. And later, reviewed that I made, I realized I didn't know if the choice was mine. And it was not looking like me was writing this script. It was quite odd. Not in a dramatic existential way. More like I couldn't feel the reasoning behind it. I couldn't trace the decision back to something actually that I understood or believed. It was efficient, it was good, but it was not quite mine. And I started noticing it everywhere. When I felt uncertain about decision, I asked AI before the sitting with uncertainty myself. When I needed to process something emotionally, I framed it as a prompt before even journaling it. When I wanted to understand something, I asked for the summary instead of reading a work. Every single one of these choices was rational, faster, more efficient, and even better output. And every single one of them was quietly training me to reach outward before going inward, to seek the answer before developing my own capacity to find it. Let's talk about what's actually happening psychologically. Self-improvement, real self-improvement, is fundamentally about developing a capacity, not acquiring information, not optimizing output, developing the internal capacity to think, feel, decide, and grow from your own resources. That capacity is built through struggle, through sitting a hard problem long enough that your own mind has to work, through making decisions without certainty and learning from their result, through feeling discomfort of not knowing and developing the tolerance to stay long enough for something real to emerge. AI removes the struggle, not maliciously. It designed you to give you a fast answer, to eliminate friction, to optimize the process. But the friction is the context of personal growth. It's not a bug, it's mechanism. The struggle is where capacity is built. Remove the struggle and you will remove a growth. Think about physical training. If you go to the gym and machine does movement for you, you get the motion without resistance. You go through the form without the load. And you build nothing. AI in the context of self-improvement do exactly the same. You get the output without resistance, the answer without the process of finding it, the clarity behind the confusion, and you build nothing. There is a deeper layer here. Self-improvement is not just about what you know, it's about who you're becoming in the process of learning. When you struggle with a hard question, when you sit with it, when you wrestle with it, come at it from different angles, fail to answer and try again, something changes in you, not just in your knowledge, in your character.
Yeah.
In your capacity, in the depth of relationship with yourself. That process cannot be outsourced. You can outsource the answer, but you cannot outsource the becoming. Let me name specific ways AI is most quietly undermining self-improvement right now. Emotional processing outsourced to prompt. People are using AI to process their own feeling, describing their emotional state to a chatbot and receiving framework, interpretations, or even advices. This is not therapy. This is not journaling. This is asking a machine to tell you what you are feeling. And what does it mean? The problem is that emotional processing, real emotional processing, requires you to sit with your feelings long enough for your own understanding to emerge. AI gives you interpretation before you've had an experience. An interpretation you didn't arrive at yourself doesn't integrate the way a realization does to you. Decision making delegated before even thinking. The moment of uncertainty arrives, AI opens. But uncertainty is information. It's telling you something about your values, your fears, your real priorities. If you hand the uncertainty to an AI before you sat with it yourself, you'd never find out what it was telling you. Learning replaced by summarizing. Why read a difficult book when AI can give you key insights in 2 minutes? Because the difficulty of reading the book is part of what book gives you. The concentration, the patience, the developing of your own interpretation. The summary gives you the content without any of the development. I'm not saying don't use AI, I'm saying do it consciously. Here's what actually changed for me. First, sit with the problem before opening a tool. Whatever the question, the creative, emotional, give yourself a minimum of 10 minutes with it alone before asking AI. Write, think, feel, struggle. Let your own mind do the first contact. Then use AI to expand, challenge or refine that you already started to develop. Not to replace your thinking, to extend it. Second, use AI for output, not for the insight. AI is extraordinary at execution. Formatting, generating options, handling technical tasks. It is not good at the thing that matters the most. Genuine self-knowledge and personal growth. Use it for doing, rather than knowing for yourself. Third, notice when you use AI to avoid sitting with discomfort. That's the tell. When the reach for the tools comes before you've even felt the discomfort properly, you're not using AI. You're hiding behind it. Name it, sit with the discomfort first. Let it tell you what it's there to tell you. Then use the tool if you still needed it. I still use AI almost every day, but the relationship changed. It's a tool now, not a reflex. Something I pick up deliberately after I've done my own work. Not a replacement of thinking, the extension of it. The self that AI cannot build for you is the only self worth having. The capacity to sit with uncertainty, to think through difficulty, to feel what you're really feeling without immediately reaching for the interpretation. To be present with your own mind long enough to actually know it. That's not something you can prompt to. That's the work and still yours to do. I'm a slow reader, not dramatically slow, not unable to read. Slower than I want to be. I have a list of books I want to get through. Psychology, philosophy, storytelling and human behavior. The list grows faster than I read it. And I kept seeing the same promise everywhere. Speed reading. Double your reading speed in 30 days.
Wow.
Read a book a week. Absorb information faster than ever before. My baseline is 263 words per minute. The average adult reads at about 200 to 250. So I'm not so far behind, but I'm not where I want to be. The goal people promised 400 to 500 words per minute. Same comprehension, double the speed. Twice the books and twice the knowledge. That sounded exactly what I needed. So I committed 30 days, every day, real techniques and honest tracking. This is what happened. Here's the thing that I didn't tell anyone when I started it. Reading slowly bothered me for a specific reason. It wasn't just a list of books. I was feeling that time was moving faster than my ability to absorb what I want from it. That I was always slightly behind on ideas, on understanding, on the depth of knowledge. I felt I needed to build that I was building. There is a specific anxiety that comes from being a creator. The feeling that you've never informed enough, never prepared enough. That somewhere out there is a book that contains information that you needed and you haven't just gotten to it yet. So the drive to read faster wasn't about just reading. It was about that anxiety. The gap between where I am and where I should be, I think. I want you to remember that because it will matter later. Yes, I am aware of the irony. Reading slowly about how to read fast. The 3 books: 10 Days to Fast Reading by Abby Mark, Breakthrough Rapid Reading by Peter Crump, The Speed Reading Book by Tony Buzan. And I set up a tracking system. Every reading session I timed myself, calculated words per minute, tested comprehension afterward with questions. Day 1 baseline is 263 words per minute. Comprehension high. I understood everything I read. The techniques that I committed to practice daily is: number 1 is removing subvocalization.
Bila aku kena viukars, kut non luare pistande.
The inner voice that reads every word out loud in your head, most people have it. It caps your reading speed at roughly the speed you speak, about 250 words per minute.
Subscribe on ShigaPOV channel. Subscribe on ShigaPOV channel.
The technique is to suppress your inner voice. Train yourself to visually process words without hearing them. Technique number 2 is chunking. Instead of reading word by word, training your eyes to take the text in group of words, 3 to 5 at a time, moving across the line in fewer jumps. Technique 3, using a pointer.
So that's the plan?
A finger or pen moving slightly faster than comfortable across the page, pulling your eyes forward, preventing regression. The habit of rereading page and the same line multiple times. I committed to 30 minutes per day. Every day, no executions, and let's go. The first thing I noticed is how uncomfortable to suppress your inner voice. Subvocalization isn't just a habit. It feels like understanding. It feels like a proof that you are actually reading, not just scanning. When you suppress it, reading feels like driving with a blindfold. You are moving forward, but you are not sure that you are actually on the road. By the end of week 1, my speed is increased from 263 to 310 words per minute, about 18% faster. Comprehension test noticeably lower. I was reading faster, but I was retaining less.
Yeah.
I told myself this was expected. The book said that this would happen. Your brain needs time to adjust. Trust the process. Week 2, the chunking technique started clicking. Something about training your eyes to move in deliberate group rather than word by word. It started to feel less like fighting and more like a different way of seeing. Speak by the end of week 2 is 340 words per minute, nearly 30% improvement from a baseline. And here's where something interesting happened. I noticed that certain type of contents responded differently to fast reading. Psychology books, ones that I actually care about, suffered. A paragraph from Jung, read at 340 words per minute, is felt like watching movie on double E. You get the plot, you lose everything else. But a business book, structured, pinpoints, clear claims, fast reading works fine, maybe even better, because business books are often padded. Speed reading naturally cuts to what's there. I filed that observation. Week 3, 370 words per minute, and something shifted in my motivation. The tracking had become slightly compulsive. Every session measuring the number, watching it go up, feeling good when it improved, and slightly anxious when it's not. I caught myself reading to hit the number rather than to understand what I was reading, which was a familiar feeling. The same pattern I'd noticed in all areas of my life, turning something meaningful into a metric and then serving the metric instead of the thing the metric is supposed to measure. Reading faster, absorbing less, and somehow moving more productive. That bothered me. Week 4, speed 390 words per minute. Comprehension is about 40 to 48%. 48% improvement from a baseline, almost at the promised 400. Comprehension, I will be honest about that, for certain material is significantly lower. Not disastrously lower, but the lower that I could feel the difference. When I went back to read passages that I read at speed, I often found the depth I completely missed, layers I'd slid over, connections I hadn't made. The speed was real, but the question I was avoiding was starting to feel unavoidable. What is reading actually for? Somewhere in a week 3 and 4, I picked up a book that wasn't in experiment list, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, and I tried to fast read it. I got maybe 2 pages before I stopped completely. Not because the technique failed, because something in me was resisting applying the techniques to this particular book. Every sentence in Meditations is compressed. There is no padding, no scaffolding. Every line is the point. Reading it fast would be like eating in 30 seconds. You consume the calories, you tasted nothing. And sitting with that realization, I understood something that I'd actually been doing for 30 days. I'd been optimizing for volume, for throughput, for the feeling of reading more. But the books I loved the most, the ones that actually changed the way how I see, were never fast experiences. They were slow ones, the kind where you read a page and put a book down and just sit with it for a while. That kind of reading cannot be made faster. That kind of reading is the point of reading. At least for me. So here's where I need to be completely honest about what this experiment revealed. Not just about reading, about the anxiety that started it. Remember what I was saying in the beginning? That the drive of fast reading wasn't about just reading. It was about a feeling never being enough, never informed enough, never prepared enough. Fast reading doesn't solve that, because it's not a reading problem. If you read 400 books at 400 words per minute, but you're doing it to outrun an anxiety,
It is a lie. They know.
about not being enough, you will finish every book and still feel behind, because anxiety doesn't really live in your reading list. It lives in a relationship with yourself, and no reading speed fixes that. And here's what I also discovered, and this is more practical. Fast reading is a legitimate skill. It generally works for a specific types of content. Research papers, business books, news, content that is structured linearly, where information is the point and the experience of receiving it doesn't matter. For that type of content, fast reading is valuable. I will keep using it, but for the books that matter most to me, philosophy, psychology, literature, speed is the enemy of the point. Those books aren't information delivery systems, they are experiences. And you cannot fast forward experience without losing that experience. So what do I actually do different now? First, I read in two modes deliberately. Fast mode, research, business articles, anything where I'm looking for a specific type of information or getting an overview. For this, the techniques works. I use them 370 to 400 words per minute. Lower comprehension tolerance, scanning for what I need. Slow mode, anything that matters. Psychology, philosophy, everything where the experience of sitting with that idea is the point. I read this at whatever speed feels right. Sometimes I read the same paragraph 3 times. That's not a failure of speed, that's the reading working. Second, I deal with the anxiety separately. The feeling of being behind, of never reading enough, knowing enough, and falling behind. That doesn't live in my reading list. It lives in patterns I need to address directly, not by reading, by doing the actual work on the actual thing. Third, I stopped measuring the reading speed. The moment I stopped tracking the number, I started enjoying reading again, which told me everything I needed to know about what the tracking had been doing to me. I came into this experiment wanting to be faster. I'm leaving it wanting to be more present. My reading speed is genuinely higher, 390 words per minute, on the materials that suits the technique. That's real, that's useful, I'll keep that. But the more important thing that I found in the middle of all that optimization was the question I'd been avoiding. What I'm actually trying to do when I read. The answer that I kept coming back to: understand things more deeply. Not quickly, more deeply. And depth requires the one thing speed reading specifically trains you to eliminate. Sitting with something, letting it work on you, reading a sentence and stopping. Not because you didn't understand it, but because you did. And you needed a moment to feel what that meant. The best book I read in those 30 days, I read it slowly. One chapter at a time, sometimes one page. And I remember everything in it. That's not a coincidence.